off the dribble. I would probably, nowadays, of course, I think I would be better just from the sheer standpoint of what's available to you from a training technique standpoint, from an eating standpoint. We used to eat steak and steak before games. That was the meal, the pregame meal in college. We'd have steak. I mean, come on, nobody eats steak before an athletic event anymore. It's a carbo load now. So if I knew more about the eating habits, the workout, my last year, Nautilus came into being the first time. And we never lifted. We never did any of that stuff. I would be bigger, stronger, more flexible, have more energy. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that if I were a young person today with the work ethic that I had and the time that I put in working at the game, if I would have been working at all of these other skills and what's available that you guys have done such a great job putting on better basketball videos and DVDs, I would say at least 20% to 25% better as a player. And that's a significant amount.
What was your off season like? What did you do to develop in the off season?
Well, I think what you have to do, you have to be honest with yourself. And I don't know how many players really are honest with themselves. And you must sit down, evaluate your game, and figure out what areas of the game were you least efficient or proficient in. And then you take those areas of the game and you spend your time on that. It's amazing to me when I see some of these players go out to practice. They're good shooters, and they'll go out and spend 90% of their workout on shooting, which makes no sense whatsoever. I mean, you're pretty darn good. All you want to do is fine-tune it and keep it sharp. So you spend the majority of your time on ball handling. You spend the majority of your time on perhaps screening off the boards. I mean, other things that you don't do well, those are the areas that you spend more time on. And the other thing I think that's very important for anybody, whether it's in basketball or anything in life that you're doing, is never be satisfied with what you've accomplished. I mean, the moment I think that you get to the point where you're satisfied with what you've done, complacency will set in, and that's your downward spiral. I always knew that I could get to be a better player. I was never satisfied with what I did. I knew I could never play the perfect game, and yet every time I went out there on the court, I tried to play a perfect game. Because let's face it, basketball is a game of mistakes. The team that makes the fewest mistakes wins the game, right? You miss less shots. Right? You get, the thing about it is that you get more rebounds because what? You don't make as many mistakes. You screen off the boards. You don't give up the offensive rebound. So that's what it's all about. And you try to play the game as perfectly as you can and never be satisfied no matter how well you played a game. And just, hey, you can be happy about it. Hey, I had a good game. I played really well. But you know what? I can still do a little bit more. And again, it's learning from the mistakes that you make, because you are going to make mistakes in every game, let's face it. And if you have that kind of mindset and mental attitude about it, then I think you can reach a very high level of success. So it's a great game. I mean, it's not rocket science. It's not complicated when you think about it. There's only 5 people on the floor on each side. So how many different combinations of things can you run? So just go out, study these things. I'm serious, folks. I'm telling you, on the women's game for quite a few years. Had an opportunity to watch it. I've watched its development and its growth. That's kind of a little bit similar to what's happened with European basketball as far as the men, is that the women have gotten more athletic. You never used to see women shoot a jump shot. I mean, now you're shooting just jump shots. There's even a few of them actually dunk the ball. The difference being is that I think in the women's game, they play the game below the rim. A lot of the men play the game above the rim with the tremendous athleticism and the strength and the speed that they have. But the women's game is fun for me to watch. I kind of equate it to comparing men's tennis to women's tennis. Although the Williams sisters are changing that a little bit as far as the power game goes, but generally speaking, men's tennis is a power game. Women's tennis is more of a finesse game, more rallies, things of that nature. Right. And in basketball, it's the same type of thing. They play the game maybe a little bit more fundamentally sound in some respects, although there are certain areas of the game for women I'm a little bit surprised. And this is why I'm really surprised, because generally they do a lot of great things fundamentally, and they listen a lot better than the men do when it comes to being coached. But I'm surprised that they're not better shooters. I'm really surprised. As well as they do things fundamentally, some of the games when you watch them, I'm just astonished at how poor the shooting percentages are. And I think one of the reasons that happens too is that where they really need some help, I don't think they finish well close to the basket. Maybe, I don't know, maybe because it's the femininity aspect of it, but although it does get physical at times, but inside, I don't think they use their bodies the way men use their bodies and play a power game down inside. and they miss a lot of stuff inside. But I still think that's the one area that they need to improve on, is probably in the shooting. But the women's game's come a long way. It's fun for me to watch it. I enjoy watching it, just as I enjoy watching women's tennis. The fundamentals that we're teaching here are applicable, obviously, to anyone playing the game, whether it's a woman or a man, whether it's a young lady or a young man. If they learn to do these things that we're teaching them here, they're going to become better basketball players. They will build a foundation that they then can build upon. How high it goes, well, that's all predicated on how much talent and skill and ability they have. However, if anyone studying these tapes learns how to do what we're teaching, that will enable them to have an opportunity to compete and play up to at least a certain level. Whereas they wouldn't have that chance if they didn't learn these things. And if they are intelligent and learn by the mistakes and things that they make, they can take themselves to a relatively high level. I mean, there's a lot of guys playing the game today who are playing on guts, great heart, but they are pretty fundamentally sound. And they do the little things that coaches love you to do. And you've coached, I've coached. Listen, give me a player who's fundamentally sound, and everybody's saying, hey, well, he's a great athlete. I say, yeah, but does he know how to play? You know, I mean, do I have to have all this time to try to teach him how to play, to use this athleticism? I had a kid play for me in the minor leagues. I think of this kid all the time. He was Michael Jordan-esque physically, actually stronger, bigger, stronger body than Michael. But Michael Jordan, jumping Billy, athletic ability, one of the nicest kids ever met in my life. He would be at practice early. He would come up to me and ask me if I'd stay with him late to work with him. Worked so hard on the things I was showing him. And he said, I remember saying, he says, Coach, he says, gosh, I wish I could have learned these things when I was younger. And I said, you know, I wish I could have taught these things to you when you were younger, because it's scary for me and for Clifford Ray, my assistant coach in